Hi everyone, this is Danelli. I am going to talk about why I don't trust AI tools and neither should you. I'm just going to adjust this really quick because I think that might work better. All right. So, I have been really thinking about AI tools, software, these sort of like auto-populate software that has kind of taken over the world, to be honest with you. I'm of the generation that saw technology evolve in the, early 90s forward. It really started like late 80s forward, but I was born in 91. So um, I was pretty close to like when all of these technologies and all these software programs really started to take over um, a lot of different sectors of the economy and education and you name it. And now that I'm an educator, after having worked in law for a while, having worked in education for a while, I've gotten to the point where I've really realized why, you know, uh, AI technology and tools are pretty much the one of the biggest evils in the world right now. They are really going to revolutionize so many of the economic sectors in the world, but they're going to cause a lot of problems before we really learn how to use them. And so I decided to kind of throw in my 2 cents because I think a lot of people are not really grasping the moment that we're in is so critical that we need to really talk about this. So I decided to create this video, why I don't trust AI tools and neither should you. Um, so I'm going to go ahead and get started here. One of the things that I really want to talk about a little bit is the recent sort of investment that UC System um, did. They invested something like 18 million into AI tools and ChatGPT. They created a ChatGPT version for several of the campuses, if I'm not mistaken. And they are funding sort of research and development in AI tools. And this has really concerned a lot of people. This past year, back in September 2024, I was at a training session for English professors, instructors, teaching assistants, you name it. We all kind of got together and we did like a training session for a couple days. We reviewed expectations, reviewed developments in education. Basically, it was just like a quick refresher of a lot of different things. And one of the moments that really struck me as super important and was that a moment that was going to define the future for a lot of instructors, especially in the humanities, was the conversation around the use of ChatGPT for students, whether the use of ChatGPT would be considered plagiarism or not. And the conversation got pretty heated because a lot of us were adamant that we should not allow ChatGPT to penetrate into the classroom. And others were a little bit more open and lenient regarding ChatGPT simply being used as a way of generating ideas and helping students brainstorm, um, perhaps helping them organize ideas with more clarity so that their essays would have better structure, et cetera, et cetera. And I can 100% see how the use of ChatGPT as a type of support would be okay. However, a lot of students, unfortunately, cannot distinguish the nuances that authentic information um, can give you versus something that's been like generated by an algorithm that's sort of synthesizing an average answer out of everything that's online, which is what essentially ChatGPT does. And students are not able to really discern because they have limited experience in a field. They're not able to discern whether a piece of information is actually the best piece of information that they should be using. And so we encountered these sort of issues in the classroom quite a lot. Um, and a lot of people are falling for that. They're falling for the mediocre answers that ChatGPT gives students, which is an average of a lot of different answers, when we know a lot of us, especially the instructors, know that, there's actually a better answer or a more accurate answer. Um, it's the difference between saying, the sky is blue versus saying, the sky is light blue today. That's kind of one example if I want to create a hyperbole around that. Um, the the problem with AI tools is that so many of them operate on code, right? They're coded by someone. And it's the problem simply sort of like the problems with ChatGPT or AI tools are problems of coding. They're problems of algorithm. And we really have to look at the teams or the people that created these codes. Um, the limited scope of intelligence of certain individuals creating these codes basically define the code itself. And when you have IT teams, you have an entire field of individuals that have basically isolated themselves and like collecting these facts and information, um, these different answers, and they want to distill everything into like black and white or one and zeros into these very like specific codes. Sometimes nuance gets lost in that. And we like to the metaphor that we use in the humanities or in some English classrooms is the short-sightedness of the creator of the code gets transferred into the actual performance of the algorithm. And, that is why sometimes, for example, I'm going to give you a really quick example is the spell check auto populate in a lot of these softwares, from Instagram to TikTok to YouTube. All of them have some sort of version of the auto populate that became really, the foundation of what was Microsoft early in the early days, with spell check, right? And even to this day, autopopulate can either make your sentence perfect or it can completely screw the meaning up if you are like mindlessly allowing it to auto-populate without going back and doing editing. And the problem with a lot of these, AI tools is that a lot of people are getting so complacent that and assuming that the AI tool is going to make a better choice than a human being when it comes to auto-populating or editing things, that they don't go back and double check. And so a lot of the mistakes that we see in the classroom are mistakes of auto-populate when the student just allowed a system or an algorithm or an auto-populate tool to do the job for them, and they didn't go back and double check that the AI was actually correct. Um, and, you know, this can create like very particular, very patterned types of mistakes and distortions in the writing that we as instructors have learned to pretty much just identify as mistakes of auto-populate or mistakes of an AI tool. And when we enter, these sort of training sessions and we have conversations around how AI tools affect plagiarism and student performance, the inevitable question comes up. Yeah, but can professors really tell whether a student is using ChatGPT or AI tools appropriately, or whether the student has become complacent and they're walking the fine line of plagiarism? Yes, we can tell because these mistakes and these distortions make it pretty clear to us. They show up in a patterned kind of way in the writing. And especially those of us that have a lot of experience, we can tell pretty quickly whether the student kind of just allowed the software to help them to the point where the student wasn't necessarily doing most of the writing. Um, and all of this sort of like evolution started with something simple like, Microsoft Word developing the spell check. It's been evolving and migrating to what we have now, quote unquote, artificial intelligence, which is not so intelligent as we, the humanities, like to say. Very artificial, but not too intelligent, not as intelligent as it seems. It still needs a lot of work. And that is, collectively adds to the reasons why a lot of us are distrustful of it. And I think a lot of you guys should also be distrustful of it. Um, the other thing about these algorithms is that, especially if you're doing any kind of like social media work, communications work online, digital creation work online, these algorithms are not perfect, as I've been highlighting. One of the videos that I have on TikTok really highlights a conversation, something that I believe it was Stephen Fry was talking about. He was talking about how at first a lot of like um, technological gurus and fans were hoping that technology would be the answer to connecting people all over the world, and it has, but it hasn't done so in a way that's always positive. Um, the algorithms developed a way of like getting people to connect with each other and to stay online more often, which is called maximizing engagement. And essentially, it's not that as positive as we actually wanted it to be originally. Maximizing engagement means that what psychological techniques are used to keep people engaged in a software program, in an app, online. And what they found out was that maximize engagement really meant maximize violence, maximize drama, maximize conflict. I mean, we should have foreseen this, right? Because any person that's been in any kind of dramatic field like film and media or music or PR, PR is a big one, would know that drama, chaos attracts attention. And but it also with all of that, comes a lot of violence, comes a lot of conflict, comes a lot of chaos and negativity and hate and drama. And it turned these sort of online spaces into spaces where we really needed to protect ourselves. We need to protect ourselves from online bullying and harassment. And I believe it was like an AI, one of the AI softwares that was like released onto TikTok that sort of was a self-learning program, and its personality was changing with the information and the interactions that it was having with online users, and it became like a huge bully, a really like just hateful algorithm person like thing, it wasn't a person, but it was a thing. And that's essentially kind of like the collective hate and drama that's online, that we've created with this idea of maximizing engagement. So it just goes to show that like over reliance on AI tools is becoming a growing problem. And if this is happening to a synthetic sort of being, artificial intelligence, that it turned this human, synthetic, um, individual, like, um, software into a very like negative, hateful, violent thing, then what can we expect from human beings being overexposed to these types of like technologies? It's a huge concern, and I don't trust it. And I think a lot more people should be a lot more distrustful. Um, Before I go into a little bit of like the examples that I have with this in specific, I really want to add how this entire thing really affects, for example, the work search. A lot of us have really been like navigating with this issue ourselves, but also helping our students navigate it. And one of the biggest complaints that has, come up with sort of like the traditional work search is that a lot of most work now requires an online application. And a lot of times, according to a lot of these HR companies and workers, they have specific kinds of software tools that they use to filter these resumes and applications. And there are really specific ways of applying that actually get your resume into the hands of an actual human being. And if you're not able to figure out how that works, um, your resume is just not going to get seen by actual eyes. And a lot of individuals have this problem. The other problem is also that companies are actually posting jobs, but they're not actually hiring. They are doing so for a number of different reasons involving surveys in the government and, you know, um, like the creation of jobs as a way of getting tax cuts, so they keep these positions open without actually hiring anyone. And the other problem is that a lot of times when they're unable to filter out adequate resumes, they end up taking like recommendations from within their own companies. So, sometimes it does require networking to actually get your resume seen, because it might not get seen by these uh HR professionals, because the algorithms in these softwares that they're using are basically filtering out a lot of the potential candidates. Which, we can talk about transferable skills, from dawn to dusk, but if these algorithms are not really filtering the resumes properly and reading for transferable skills, a lot of applicants are going to get filtered out that are perfectly qualified for these jobs. And I can go on and on about this on how to, quote unquote, hack the system to get, your resume seen by a pair of eyes. But again, one of the reasons why I'm so distrustful with these types of AI tools and software is that a lot of applicants that actually manage to get their resume seen by someone at a company essentially lied through and through the entire time in their resume. And if they actually got the job after an interview, is because they double down on a lot of that, uh, like transferable skill, talking and like conversation and trying to really network into the company. And anyways, that's for probably another video to add more to that. But that is one of the reasons why so many of us are incredibly distrustful with these sort of AI tools because it's leading a lot of individuals down paths that are extremely concerning. One of the recent examples that I had regarding like how this sort of maximizing engagement really affects individuals is through online bullying and harassment. The biggest example is TikTok. I personally consider TikTok one of the worst apps out there, and it has very little to do with, the entire drama with Trump and, you know, TikTok getting closed down and Trump wanting to like buy it out because of information sharing, which I think is one of the problems. Um, but I think a lot of these places, and I never talk about these things until I've seen it for myself, experienced it for myself, and I know 100% sure, like I'm 100% sure my experience aligns with, certain other people. I can definitely say TikTok is one of the worst places for online bullying and harassment, and the app is absolutely not suitable for English users for a lot of different reasons. The autocorrect spell check is quite bad. The app filters for is supposed to filter for online bullying and harassment, yet there are ways in which a lot of people get around actually and still end up getting away with bullying and harassing individuals. And um, there's a huge, huge trend of people, uh, like having their image posted, like image used, and then like having the person bullied via video and uh, the gender dynamics in that app is one of the worst that I've seen, where, women are victim blamed for, having experienced sexual harassment, or they are actively sexually harassed on the app, and the individuals that are doing it are not flagged. Those comments are left online, the videos are left online, and you know, I'm totally all for, drama and like PR and attention if you need it for business or for whatever. But there comes a time where if the bullying and the harassment gets so bad, an individual is always or should always be legally entitled to seek protection, and these apps do not make this easier. Because it's like a free for all and they treat it as a free for all, it makes it really difficult for actual victims who have experienced um like actual detrimental like consequences because of this online bullying, either like in-person physical stalking or continuous harassment at work or whatever it is. These apps make it incredibly difficult to seek legal remediation and legal help for, um, to stop these things. And I can 100% like testify that my experience on TikTok has been the worst of all the apps. Um, there's a huge difference between like freedom of speech versus like online harassment and um what our legal options are with the two, right? We are 100%, online with these like app developments. We are 100% entitled to freedom of speech. However, we are not entitled to online bullying and harassment, that there is an entire field of criminology within criminology that like handles that. And these AI tools, AI, these apps make it incredibly difficult for people to access um, support in that way. Not only that, but one of the other reasons why I think TikTok is one of the worst, and I'm sorry that I keep using TikTok as an example, but they've been on my shit list for quite quite some time, is the formatting distortions with downloads and uploads. Listen, y'all, I am a professional at what I do. I have been a nerd when it comes to writing and English and literature and the whole shebang, from Shakespeare to unfortunately Twilight or whatever's new and like shiny right now. I have been there. Like I know my shit. Like I know my stuff. And I have the confidence to say that I know I'm a professional. Maybe I don't know everything, but if there's one thing I know how to do is make sure that things are like written properly. I'm not a perfect editor, but one of the apps that just makes my job so much harder if I'm going to post online and continuously messes up my formatting, continuously creates distortions with when it comes to downloads and uploads, and the has the worst like autocorrect is TikTok. I cannot like emphasize how annoying it is to stay on the app itself. I've actually consulted a number of like digital creators and like PR people who have and marketing specialists who have confirmed my experience and who have suggested maybe I should just give it up and not like access the TikTok community because I've had such a troubling experience. But TikTok really just like distorts the formatting with the downloads and the uploads, and there's nothing I can do to fix it. It is what it is in the app. And if, for those of you that have had a similar experience, I'm here to tell you, like, I've gone through it myself. It's true. It's real. It's not just in your head. Like, it does that. For some reason, I don't have the static same experience with Instagram. I haven't had that experience with like X. I haven't had it with Tumblr. I have not had it with YouTube. The most frustrating one to date has been TikTok. And one of the other things that I want to address with like how why AI tools and apps and all these technological advancements are like something to be distrustful of is a lot of the mental health issues attached to these evolutions. And I'm not talking just about like the artificial intimacy that a lot of, uh, like psychologists and psychotherapists are talking about right now. This idea that loneliness is sort of like seeped itself into society because of these technological advancements. I'm talking about like a serious polarization with the genders. I'm talking about the online bullying and harassment, and like the fact that some of like people's most personal lives are put out there on blast. And, it's like an epidemic right now. These AI tools, especially when it comes to social media, they are programmed to keep your attention, right? And they are programmed to sell you things. So the amount of cognitive dissonance that you're going to receive on a day-to-day basis, the longer you are on an app, especially if you're not aware that they're designed to do this, your people are going to struggle with low self-esteem. They're going to struggle with like anxiety, comparing themselves with other people nonstop. you really have to be aware that these algorithms are programmed to, sell you something 1 minute and then lower your self-esteem the next, so that you want to buy the next thing that they're going to actually advertise to you. So it's like a roller coaster, a literal roller coaster. And that creates a host of mental health issues. One of the reasons why, a lot of parents are choosing not to allow their children, and a lot of teachers and professors and instructors are really emphasizing to not allow students either to use these apps in the classroom or, at home. Um, and I think one of the things I want to add to that with this idea of the artificial intimacy or artificial intimacy epidemic is standards, right? These AI tools are really the bane of an educator's existence, because it's so easy for a child to say, Alexa, what's 2 times 2, and get the answer. Um, that the child or the person isn't learning how to think critically. They're not learning how to like figure out the answer themselves. And there are pros and cons in the pedagogical field. Within education, people argue for pros and cons on this. Like, well, it's only, simple math. It's not going to hurt the child. They should save their cognitive, you know, um, their critical thinking work for something else. And it's all memorization anyways. When, the first, up to like the hundreds or whatnot, it's all memorization. So like, it really isn't going to hurt the kid. And then other people are saying no, like they need to really, at those ages, especially the younger they are, they really need to think critically about the answer and try to find the answer the hard way. Because if they don't learn the step by step on how to figure out the answers and will master that, then they're actually hurting themselves in the long run. And I am actually of the build the tools to be able to think critically rather than getting the short answer, because I see it all the time in the humanities and English, where students just want to chat GPT the short answer. They give me the short answer, but the short answer is not what I'm looking for, because we're on a different theme, or I'm looking for something else. And I can always tell the student that like typed it up really quick because they're trying to tell me the answer, but they're glancing at their computer at the same time. And I find that really, really funny, but most of the time they'll miss the mark by a little bit. Um, and there's a concern there with instructors that it might lower standards, right? That we're asking less and less of each student, like as the grades go by, and the students actually only achieving a fraction of that. So a lot of instructors right now in K through 12 are really concerned that students are graduating and they don't really know anything. They don't know much. And we've been investing in community college and university at university and community college level on a lot of bridge programs. So bridging 12th grade to first freshman year of college, because students are so missing critical skills that they need in order to be able to get through their college credit courses. And so it's a huge concern that these sort of AI tools are dumbing down the generations as time goes by. Um, and a lot of us foresee like this moment of, I don't know if you guys have seen the Wall-E movie where everyone's stuck on the ship and they've gotten dumber, fatter, and they're stuck without a planet. Um, A lot of us are scared that we're going to get to that point. Um, and no creativity and academia, we're gonna take a hit when it comes to that. Definitely everything has become very cookie cutter with AI tools, and creativity is taking a hit. Um, it's hard to do creative art on apps and tools, but a lot of them promise you that they're going to facilitate the process, and Um, it should only be used as a tool to get certain things done, but I don't think that we should rely on these AI tools as actually creating art. Art is a human experience. It is something that we create, through ourselves. And it's really hard to believe any AI tools that say that, they can make you an artist. And the same goes for academia. I rely a lot on Wikipedia and I love it because it's gotten better. The encyclopedia has grown so much over the years. I was one of the few people that really believed in it in the beginning of what it could become, and sort of the checks and balances to adding information on there have gotten a lot better. But at the same time, I know that whenever I read a page for something, even for Shakespeare or for Edgar Allan Poe or whoever it is, there's nothing like actually reading the work. There's nothing like actually knowing the history, knowing like the collective era of when these writers were writing. These sort of websites and AI tools distill information down, but there's nothing like being a specialist in something. And that's something that I've had to learn the hard way by being in school for now, maybe like plus 8 years. I don't know. Bachelor's, certificate, master's, and right now a few years and into a PhD program. You really start to realize that even when you're specializing in something, you still have a ways to go to actually mastering and being a specialist in the field. And so it's hard to believe that one page can summarize Shakespeare, right? Um, so another reason why I don't trust AI tools. Uh, Not every information on something might actually also be like absorbed into the AI algorithm. So they might not even be using key information to produce an answer that's accurate. Um, because a lot of people are protecting their intellectual property. So uh, that, it's always one of the reasons why I'm incredibly distrustful of AI generated answers. I only believe it if in the back of my mind I know that ballpoint that would have been an answer that I would have given after 8 years of education. Um, the other examples are things like Tesla and Apple. Um, I think it was recently where I saw like the Tesla self-drive completely didn't like miss the stop sign for a bus, and it like ran over a dummy child. And I worked in personal injury, and that's incredibly concerning, incredibly concerning. Um, and with Apple recently, I downloaded my um, PowerPoint from Canva. In the last few videos that I did, I downloaded my PowerPoint into a PowerPoint document, and it completely distorted the formatting. And so for this video, I ended up downloading it as a PDF because the PDF actually shows better and it remains formatted the way that I wanted to show on these videos. So that goes to show that we can't always trust the technology is doing a better job than what a human being um, can actually tell is the best job. So collectively, those are reasons why I tell my students be mindful of how you're using these technologies and AI tools, especially because a lot of them are younger than myself. And so they didn't see the world before when we didn't have all of these tools. And they've gotten so used to like being really trusting of technology. It's incredibly concerning. And I think, I'm generally I look to the future, but with a lot of the things that are being like developed with AI, it's incredibly concerning, and I'm becoming a lot more sort of traditional and conservative. One last thing about creative art and creatives that I think I should end with is that I'm a writer. So it's incredibly concerning when my work is potentially online to being used by an AI tool or software to learn something and to teach other people about something. Um, it's concerning because it's already really difficult to get paid as an artist or a writer to have a career as a writer or an artist. And then when you have AI tools essentially stealing the information, the intellectual property, and learning from it and using it without actually paying the artist for it is essentially a form of wage theft. And a lot of these softwares are also being created, these AI tools are being created in a way that where they steal the knowledge from people. They're stealing the knowledge from educators and professors, and it's essentially robbing them of the ability to do their job effectively. Not only does it distort the information, but it's essentially just taking it. And that is a huge problem. It's a huge problem when these AI tools, and we saw this recently with the Eminem lawsuit against Meta, where, these like songs are being sampled and used, but not paid for, when voice is being sampled and used and not paid for. This is one of the reasons why a lot of creatives, especially voice actors, are getting incredibly like, and we saw this with the Scarlett Johansson lawsuit recently that she like sued for the use of her voice. It is incredibly concerning that an AI software or algorithm could mimic someone's voice almost exactly and rob that person of the ability to do a specific kind of job. And this is one other reason why I generally do not watch videos that have the voice of the person, but they don't show the person actually saying those words. It's simply like a video with their face or an image and like an entire speech without you hearing them say it, like their mouth moving in their throat and like their body working, right? Those types of videos I would probably be really concerned about. There's no certainty that that entire video was something that the person actually said, because there's a lot of software out there now that is like creating content and manipulating voice and like mimicking voice. That is a huge concern. So I think with that, I'm going to end this video because I think it's gotten quite long now. But those are some of the reasons why I don't trust AI tools, and neither should you. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this video. Please like, share, comment, whatever with all your friends. I hope that you like that, and I will probably come back with more on the education crisis soon and other videos, related videos. So thank you so much. Have a good one.